what we're looking at is standard operating procedures and what you need to know about standard operating procedures. So where does that fit into the whole S.P.A.R.K.S Blueprint system as a whole? We have, as you know, the 6 steps of the S.P.A.R.K.S Blueprint, which is specialize, position. So we got the S.P.A.R.K.S. We got specialized, position, awareness, relationships, keeping in touch, and systemize. So standard operating procedures would sit under the final S, which is in terms of systemizing your business. Why do we want to systemize our business? Because number one, we want to make sure that we have an asset. So, and a business needs to be an asset. Everybody needs to be thinking at some point about an exit strategy or about stepping back and coming off of the tools. And you can only do that if you create an asset that can run without you, an asset that doesn't require your input all of the time. And by setting up standard operating procedures, you actually give yourself that opportunity to stand back and say, right, this is a business in its own right. It's not a business that is just in my head. It's a business in its own right. I can stand back. And the fact that people have procedures to follow and know what to do without me being around means that I can either take time away from the tools and sit back and manage my business, or I could actually take that and sell it. It has value. So that's one of the reasons why we would set up standard operating procedures. The other reason that we may want to set up standard operating procedures, or we should set up standard operating procedures, is to make sure that our business is running smoothly. And it's not just constantly in firefighting mode and constantly trying to come up with new solutions for the same problems, or come up with this dealing with the same issues and the same problems all of the time. So those are some of the reasons that we need to have standard operating procedures in our business. I know a number of people were interested in looking for various different bits and pieces of information about standard operating procedures. My contention is that everybody should start documenting the processes in their business from day one. You should start documenting the processes in your business, whether you intend to remain a one-man band or whether you intend to grow your business. It's always a good idea to make sure that you have operating procedures in place. We're going to look at standard operating procedures. Standard operating procedures. As I said at the outset, this is going to be broken into a number of parts. This particular segment, we are going to take a look at what are standard operating procedures and where you should be using them in your business. Some people will find standard operating procedures a daunting idea. They think that it needs to be a big, wordy document, and the reality is it does not. You can make them as simple or as complex as you actually want to have them in your business. What are standard operating procedures? Okay, in very simple terms, standard operating procedures are a document, a process that you will use in order to ensure the smooth running of your business. In order to ensure that when you set down a way or a methodology of doing something, that other people who are working for you in your business can follow exactly the same processes, and make use of those processes so that they are effective. In other words, many people, specifically within the trades, tend to judge people based on their own performances. And by the way, just raise your hands if this is you. How many times have you gone to employ somebody, and when you get them on board and you get them to do something, you start looking at it and you go, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. I don't operate in that manner. They don't do things the way that I do them. And therefore, as a result of that, you start to rule them out as being the right kind of person for you. And you start thinking that nobody can do the job as good as you. When in reality, they don't need to do it as good as you. Nobody's ever going to be as good as you. What they do need to do is they need to do it in a manner that is correct and in a manner that is satisfying the customer safely and providing value to the customer. They cannot be expected to be you, but they can be expected to follow a set of procedures that you have laid down that ensure that the job gets done the way that you would like it done, or to the satisfaction of you and your customer. Now, many organizations will use standard operating procedures for various different aspects, or various different methods and things that they do in their business. In a manufacturing plant, they may have a particular sequence of turning on and off a machine, or a particular sequence for packing crates. In a service industry like ours, it could be as simple as answering the telephone. The bottom line is, they are about the smooth operation of your business. And it takes away that whole judgmental thing of, I wouldn't do it that way. You literally have a laid out set of procedures, and as long as the person is following the step-by-step processes, then after that, what personal flares they add to it, what personality they bring to it, doesn't matter. It's a case of, if you do A followed by B followed by C followed by D, then you are following and keeping the procedure. So why do we need operating procedures in our business? A couple of reasons why you actually need them. I alluded to this at the beginning of the presentation this morning. Number one, if you ever desire to sell your business, if you want to move on from your business at any point, if everything is just in your head, if you are the only one who knows how you run your business, if you do things on the fly, you do not have a business asset. All you have is a set of things that you know how to do, and you cannot sell that. If you take something, if you take something like McDonald's, right? McDonald's, one of the better known companies in the world for having a set of standard operating procedures. So now, if you provide the franchisee of that business with a premises and all of the equipment, they can open up and get running with a McDonald's very, very quickly. Why? Because part of their training is going through the McDonald's set of standard operating procedures. And those standard operating procedures will tell them everything from how furniture should be laid out in the shop, from how machines should be cleaned, to how the floor should be washed, to how they should order in their materials, their burgers, to how they should wear their uniform, right down to how long the fries need to be in the fryer. All of these things mean that McDonald's can open up branches that do the same thing anywhere around the world. And that's the power of a standard operating procedure. Without a standard operating procedure, you would not have the likes of McDonald's. You would not have the likes of Nando's. You would not have the likes of Frankie and Benny. You wouldn't have these organizations that can pop up and set up a business, JD Sports, Pure Gyms, all of these organizations. I'm trying to think of other ones that are not in the food industry, but all of these organizations who can literally get started on a heartbeat, because all they need to do is train the individual on how to follow the procedures. Is this making sense, guys? So if you want to have an asset, that you can sell, or even if you don't plan to sell your business, if you want to have an asset that you can step back from, and you can put a manager or a team in place, and you can say, okay, I can sit out of the business on the periphery because I've done all of the brainwork, I've put together the standard operating procedures, I've got the training in place. Now I can sit back on the periphery and use my business as my pension. I can use my business to provide me with an income, but I don't have to be in my business every single day of the week. Is this making sense? Because, one of the things that we hear with many tradesmen is how difficult they find it to get off of the tools, how difficult they find it to replace themselves. And in many cases, it's because they are judging everything that they do based on their behavior rather than based on a set of processes and procedures. So they're making replacing themselves an emotional task rather than a practical task. And if you have procedures in place and you know that you can employ somebody who can follow those procedures, you can take all of that emotion out of the equation. And as long as the person, well, a couple of things. As long as, number one, you have written the procedures correctly and you've provided enough information for the person to follow. And then as long as they can follow the procedures and learn the procedures, then you have a system that you can put into place, which means it doesn't matter who the individual is. It matters that the individual can actually follow a process. Very much the same, I'll go back to it again, very much the same as the person in McDonald's. And we hear all of the jokes and all of the put downs about how it's spotty-eyed teenagers and so on and so forth. But here, the thing is, these so-called spotty-eyed teenagers and such, no offense, I'm just using a term that people use, but these kids are following a procedure and a process. So you wouldn't, or McDonald's wouldn't be able to operate by just taking a teenager out of college or out of school and putting them into McDonald's without any processes, without any procedures. What they have is, and I'll use McDonald's, continue to use McDonald's as an example because it is one of the best examples of a company who has made the best out of creating an operating manual or standard operating procedures, because it takes its staff and it teaches them step by step, you can do this. And then it doesn't matter who the individual is. All that matters is, as long as that individual can follow a set of procedures, the results should be the same. Should be the same. So those are the reasons why you need it. Number one, it's going to help you to build an asset you can sell. Number two, it's going to help you to get off of the tools. But the other thing, number three, is that while you're doing it, while you're creating the standard operating procedures, what you're doing is you're streamlining your business and making your life a lot easier. So one of the knock-on effects is that you get a much easier approach to your business. And what comes with streamlining the business is also a better control of finances. Again, a knock-on effect is that you tend to start saving and making more money because you have streamlined your processes and your procedures. What tends to happen is, as a result of what you're doing, not that you're strategically setting out to do it, but as a result of what you're doing, what you tend to do is you shred waste. You start to see where there is waste in your business and you start to shred that, you start to lose that. But also you start to see where the gaps are that you can maximize profits in your business, because you are examining these things with a view to setting up your processes and your procedures. You start to see where the gaps are and you start to see where you can actually maximize on profit. So as a knock-on effect, it tends to have a really healthy result for you financially as well. So those are some of the reasons why you need to have your standard operating procedures. Where in your business should you start looking? Where, throughout your business, what are the things that you should be looking at in terms of your standard operating procedures? They will help you to make sure that your standards, your quality standards, are adhered to. Standard operating procedures will ensure that every person that's working for you, every employee who is working in your business, is singing from the same hymn sheet. And that is not only when it comes to the physical doing of the work, but also from a customer service point of view, how you deal with and how you integrate with customers, how you do your marketing, how you do your advertising. every single task that you can put into a process or put into a procedure, you can then communicate to every single member of your staff, and they will start to understand where they sit in the business and how the various processes that you have affect their work and how they affect the work of that. So in other words, somebody who's just out on the tools, when they understand the marketing process you have in place, they'll understand better how they can communicate that message while they're actually out on the tools. Whereas if you just segregate things and you have a way that you do your marketing, but then you employ staff and you just send your staff out and they know nothing about how you market your business, they know nothing or understand nothing about the message that you're sending out to your customers, then it's very easy for them to make mistakes in how they communicate things or how they say things to your customers. Whereas if they have a manual with various processes and you break down your various processes, they understand, how health and safety works, how customer communication works, how the marketing in the business actually operates. And that way, then they're better able to communicate that message as a whole to your customers.